First of all, thank you guys. Thanks for everybody for joining us. It's good to see a lot of you guys, a lot of faces I do recognize out there, which is very nice. Kevin, thank you for having me on. I know this is the second one, and the first one went really, really well, so I'm excited to be the second guest here. I can fill you in on a couple of things that's been going on campus. The fact that I live here, I don't leave this campus very often. I think I left here a total of about 3 or 4 times in the last 6 weeks, so I've got a pretty good handle on what's going on around here. As far as the football program is concerned, we left here about 7 weeks ago, and our number one focus when we left was where were we going to be in about a week, and that was spring break. We had gotten everything that we needed to out of spring ball. I was very pleased with where we ended spring ball. Very little injuries, very little concerns of guys not being able to come back and play in the fall. So we had no concerns coming out of the spring. We made a lot of nice adjustments, guys that we needed to get a lot of reps. And we rested a lot of guys that we didn't need to get a lot of reps because we were an older team, and we had almost about 85 to 90 guys that were participating in spring football. So that ended up being a very positive thing coming out. We anticipated something like this coming along during spring break. The good thing is it hit during spring break, so it allowed us to have a plan put together. And when Mike announced that we weren't going to be coming back, we immediately put a plan together of what the staff was going to do, what the players were going to do, and how are we going to address the number one goal from here on out is really just getting them to the finish line of the semester, which happened to be last week. So now that's where we focused a lot of our effort. It was a twofold effort for us. We attacked on 2 fronts. One was we were going to make sure that our players had the support and the structure that they would typically get here in a daily life that they weren't used to. Getting up on their own. They weren't used to, attending class when they wanted to. They weren't used to doing their work when they wanted to. So we checked in twice a week with them, and I checked in with the coaches every single day. And then we brought in our academic coach, Cassie, and we worked very closely with her and the professors to make sure that we had the structure as well as the support that we needed to get our guys through it. At the end of the 6 weeks, I'm very, very proud. I was very proud of the staff. I was very proud of the players. I had just gotten the team GPA yesterday at a 3.14. So that was the highest it's been ever since I've been here. So that's a lot of hard work put into it on both ends. I'm very appreciative of them on that side. The second front that we really needed to attack was what we would typically be doing this time of year is spring recruiting and gathering the 2021, the rising seniors, and evaluating all their film. I estimated that we had about 5,000 evaluations over the last 6 weeks. Any day, any evaluations that we do now are all online anyway. We can access just about any high school seniors film online through Huddle. And it's a matter of just really hitting a few keys. So the staff spent whenever they weren't checking on them academically, the next part of the 6 weeks, really just evaluating as many guys as we possibly could. We've even expanded. We've gone all the way up into the north. We've hit West Virginia. We've hit Northern Virginia. We've hit parts of Maryland. We've hit parts of D.C., parts of the country that we normally wouldn't be able to get to if we were going to visit those places in a normal spring recruiting cycle. So it was kind of nice. We got into Cincinnati. We did that last year, and we got into Pennsylvania. We did that last year. So we still maintained our presence in South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina areas as well. So we've got a lot of that done. Of those 5,000, we probably have about 10%, close to 500 on our recruiting board right now. We're still going through those. We're still calling high school coaches. We're still tracking transcripts. We're still trying to find out what's going to trickle down to us, what are the academic requirements, and who's going to be able to fit us both athletically as a school, whether they can fit in the military lifestyle, and whether they can make it here academically. So that's a long process. That's a process that's still going on for us. And we've got that number down to about 500. By the time the season starts, it'll be close to 300. Of those 300, we probably look to sign about 10 to 12. We have another small class coming up, which has been it's been a nice sign for us. It's been a sign of retention for us. It's been a sign of being able to maintain and try to keep as many guys as we can here for their 4th and 5th years as they graduate, sometimes 3, 3.5, and 4 years. It's been a sign of us being able to keep the guys and recruit the right guys to be able to fit in here. And that's the only way that we feel that we can get good enough here and kind of maintain a level of expectation to be able to win on a consistent basis, is to be able to retain the right kind of players here. And that's a long process. We've got to make sure that we find those guys. But with only having 10 to 12, I think we signed 16 this year, but we probably had about 12 or 13 scholarships mixed up in those. That's a pretty small recruiting class for us as well. So we're starting to level that off. We're starting to get smaller classes in here. Smaller classes typically will translate into better football teams in those years, which I think we're in a good spot this year. Yeah, as you noticed yesterday, is we were proud to announce we signed 2 fifth years over the course of the last couple of months. And one is we had a great relationship with already. Summy Carlay. Summy was a guy that we knew all the way back in December that had the opportunity, or we had the opportunity to get in on early with him. He had applied to graduate school already. He wanted his MBA. His dad went to school here. His brother goes to school here. The guy that we coached at Lenore Ryan was his offensive line coach in high school. So we actually knew exactly what we were getting. Played in this offense coming out of high school. We saw his high school film. He can do it. We just don't know where he can do it. And it's going to give us nice depth. You know, we graduated 2 guys on the offensive line. But I think we're going to have a couple of guys to be able to at least compete for those 2 spots that have a chance to be able to start for us. So we're excited about that. And then Alex Ramsey, we all know fairly well. Alex was a outstanding. You got an opportunity to add a 1,300-yard rusher, All-American to your backfield. You might as well take it. I think he fits what we do probably better than anybody else. He's a downhill runner. He will be a nice combination or a nice addition to Clay. If you were to ask me coming out of the season, where were the games that we really struggled on offense? It was when Clay was, banged up. It was when Clay was, not where he needed to be, and he was trying to fight through it a little bit. And one of it was the VMI game. Clay didn't play much in that game at all. The Sanford game, that was another one in the CSU game. So we need to add a little bit of depth to that position. We still have some really good qualified guys behind him. But as I've come to find out at the B-back position for us, if you don't have a guy that can do it, we're going to struggle. And so you got to find the right guys for your offensive system. And for the first time in a while, I don't think we've signed a 5th-year offensive player here since I've been here. So we're excited to add those 2 guys to our system.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate that. A couple of questions that we had, and since you focus a lot on recruiting, I guess we'll start there. You mentioned having smaller classes, and do the guys fit us athletically? Do they fit us academically? One of the questions we got is, in what ways do you use the Citadel, being a military college, as a positive in recruiting?
It's a lot of, I explain this a lot to people that they don't quite understand it, is because when you're in coaching football and you've been at different places, this is my 5th different stop. The first one back at a military school since being at Norwich. The one thing that you kind of forget or lose sight of is when you're here and you're at other schools is you don't have exact control over where your players are throughout the course of a day. The one thing that we don't concern ourselves with here as a staff very often is where our guys are, what they're doing on a Thursday night prior to a game, and whether they're going to be late to a meeting and whether you've got to deal discipline late to a meeting or not. Those are things that we don't think about very often. We got very few guys that are late to any meetings. We got very few guys that miss anything. The things that we have to deal with, most people don't have to deal with. We know whether you're going to class or not. We know if you're not where you're supposed to be, and we know pretty instantly, and I can get a hold of you. So that we view as a positive. Every Thursday night, I know that 95% of my team is locked up behind some sort of a gate at some point. And they're not going to be able to get out and do anything that they're not supposed to be doing prior to a game. So that's a very good positive. And then the number one thing that we always talk about, and everybody kind of knows this one, is the development. Is the way that you develop here is like no other. Is we're able to train, we're able to kind of have a little bit more control over what goes on in the weight room, what goes on in their daily lives here, because just the way the place is structured. Our guys love being around Signius Hall. They love being in the weight room. They love being out on the football field. Those are all positives. Is when you have a bunch of guys that love what they're doing, you're going to be successful.
Follow-up to that question is, you mentioned the weight room there. Do you think with the new turf, the weight room being redone and future projects taking place, that'll help you in recruiting, and how so?
Well, the number one thing is the turf is, I was a little skeptical of the turf going down. There's a couple of things that I always talk about when at least it was progress going on, right? We love to see progress going on around here. And even tough times, I look out my window here and the boathouse is just about done. We've got Baston Hall going up. We've got the turf going down. We've got the new bleachers in McAllister Fieldhouse. We've got the new weight room here. Those are things that we haven't seen since I have been here. Those are things that we can recruit to no matter what. How many business majors do I recruit? Shoot, I probably recruit 90% of my team as business majors. Well, that Baston Hall is going to help me out. Am I going to be able to use the boathouse over here at some point to be able to recruit? No doubt. And the stadium fits right in there with it. And that is, it's new, it's fresh, it's clean, it's exciting. You're going to see lines on a football field in December when I'm trying to recruit a kid here. It's going to look like you can walk out there at any moment and you're going to be able to play a game. And that's exciting for a kid to look at. It's progress in a football facility. I think that's something that we've always got to, never lose focus of the fact that we're moving forward. And even in tough times, we're trying to get big projects done, and we've been able to do it. I think that's exciting for us. It's the ability for us to be able to say that we're moving forward and show it between all those buildings.
Yes, yeah. For those of you who haven't checked out the turf, please do so. I believe it's still up on YouTube. I'm sure there's photos out there that are on social media. Another question we had was, it seems transfers are becoming a large part of FCS and FBS football. We've added some transfers that obviously help us. How do you see that going, I guess, in now's time today, with COVID-19? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it's any different whether it's COVID-19 or not. I think it's just a sign of the times right now. And obviously not being a huge proponent of it, we've taken advantage of it. But the one thing that I have learned here is if you take too much advantage of it, it will harm you, and it could harm your football team. And that's why I've always tried to limit it in the last couple of years to about 2 or 3. Anything beyond that, I think, upsets the locker room a little bit, gets a little bit out of balance. Transfers here and fifth-year transfers isn't anything new. About every single head football coach that's been here has kind of taken advantage of that for us as an ability to just kind of replace what you lost and maybe what you lost throughout the spring. I don't foresee it going away. There's no sense complaining about it. You've got to deal with it. And it only goes back to one thing is when I sat the staff down and I really had a heart-to-heart about where we were in our recruiting process with the staff about 2 years ago. It was, look, we've got to stop. All right, we've got to stop sugarcoating this place because these kids will leave here in a minute. Is you got to tell them exactly what it is like around here on a daily basis. So that way you have a pretty good understanding of the guy that you're getting. Because at the end of the day, in 16 and 15, when we won football games, we won with just guys that were here. So if you can keep as many guys as you can that are here and don't overextend yourself, don't try to get a better this or that, get the guys that are just a good fit for your system and program. That's the philosophy we need to have here. And every single guy on staff needs to know that, and every single guy on staff needs to accept the fact that, hey, we are not going to be able to go out and out-recruit a lot of those other places. We just need to find what's right for our systems and do the best that we possibly can and coach them and train them and develop them.
One of the questions that came in message to me is, do you run into a lot of legacy recruits that would fit our program, sons of graduates? And if so, are they harder to recruit or easier to recruit?
We don't run into a whole lot. On occasion, we've had one or two or a few here and there, but I don't find them any harder to recruit than anybody else. I have a pretty good understanding that those legacy recruits know what this place is all about, or they should have a good idea of what it takes to be a cadet student athlete here. It's kind of, sometimes it's refreshing to run into those guys because they have a pretty good understanding of it. But no, on a given year, we may run into one or two.
Okay, good. Some COVID-19 questions. It's on everybody's mind. What does the college football season look like this year? That's part A. Part B, what are the odds of playing a full season next year? And any thoughts or information you can share with us? Yeah,
obviously two very tough questions at this point. And the only thing that I've really been saying is I'm staying as positive as I can with my players. I'm preparing to be able to play a season. I'm preparing it to look as close to normal as we possibly can. We've obviously got our concerns about training and about when we can get going and about if we can get going and about what the schedule will look like, whether everybody has seen it, whether it's a delayed opening or whether it's a conference-only schedule. Some schools may opt out. We don't know. Some schools out west may opt out already, and how that affects the college football schedule. At this point, The only thing that we know is that if we're playing football, we're pretty lucky at that point. We should just be happy that we're playing, and we're finding a way, and we're finding a way to get back to some sort of what you would say normalcy. I think you're muted there, Kevin.
Oh, apologize for that. I was on.
Right.
Sorry, the question was around the country. You're talking to Southern Conference coaches. You're talking to other coaches around the country. How much interconnected is there? Is there a lot of we're doing this, we're doing that, or is it more coaches are talking regionally? What's the thought on that?
I've had one Southern Conference coaches meeting. I've got another one today at 3:00, and we really have just been discussing different options for us. The number one thing, there's really two things that are really on the table that we all discuss. Is one is cost cutting measures. What can we do? Is there any way for us to be able to operate and maintain FCS football program and continue to do what we do as best we possibly can, but also being mindful of the bottom line, which is operation, and that can be very, very challenging at times. So we've got to be careful. Our revenue streams are the Division I games and our attendance, so we want to try to keep those as best we possibly can, if we can. The second thing is safety. At this point, is we're all discussing what are going to be the industry norms when it comes to the locker room, the weight room, testing in and out of the facility. What are some of those things going to look like, and how can we stay out ahead of it? We already have the antimicrobial lockers and that kind of stuff, and we spray our helmets down, and Kevin does a good job, our equipment manager, of making sure that we're disinfected on a weekly basis. But do we need to do more? Do we need to do more in our locker room? Do we need to do more with spacing it out a little bit? Do we need to do more with testing and that kind of stuff? Those are things that we still probably need to investigate a little bit more. And I think those are things, if we do get back to it, that'll be a concern. And then, of course, the training start whenever that can begin. That'll be another issue.
I think you alluded to it a little bit about the virus testing for players, coaches, support staff. I think right now it's an unknown, but
complete unknown. Yeah,
we're going to do everything that we can.
No question. It's one of those things that we are. First of all, it's got to become available to us, and once it does, I think we've already begun working on it. I believe Mike's begun working on that end of it already. So, yeah, that's a complete unknown to us right now. I think that's something we're going to have to push down the line once we get an opportunity to be able to bring them back.
Given all the obvious negatives of what's going on right now, has there been any silver lining for you, your coaching staff, and your players? Be it the time away from school, the online classes, or personal training? What's that been like? Is there any positives that you can pull?
You know, there are a few. I mean, you've got to look to find them. I think the number one positive for the coaching staff is their family time has been, obviously, everybody's family time has kind of been improved upon. We've had a lot more time, to the point where I like to just kind of walk around campus and get over to the office a little bit just to kind of, refresh my mind a little bit. But you're talking about guys, there would be about 8 to 10 of my guys that would be out for 3 to 4 weeks during this time of year, where they're not able to do it right now. So they're at home. They're doing a lot more work from home, telecommuting kind of stuff. So they're around a lot more than they typically would be. Our players, yeah, it's a little bit more time for them to decompress away from here. I don't know. That'll probably be one of those. Remain to be seen if that's a positive or not, because you're going to have to get them back in the groove at some point when they get back here. The number one thing that I thought was a huge positive, we ended up getting through it unscathed with a 3.1 and eligibility kind of intact and having a great GPA. That was my number one scare. That ended up being a very good positive for us. So there have been a few things. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't overly concerned because we had spring football in. I will start to get concerned once it starts to hit June and July, and then that's when it cuts into training.
Along those lines of the positive silver linings, coaches being able to spend more time with their families, what have you been doing? What's your family been up to during this time?
Well, Tiffany's been really handling the homeschooling, which there's a good and a bad to it. As one is it's kindergarten. So I think we can all handle the math in kindergarten as of right now. Number two is she's she's really she, she's really taken a lot of the burden on it, because I've tried to been operating my 90 or so kids that are over here in Cygnus Hall. I've been trying to maintain those guys and make sure that things are running up to status quo around here, because there's a level of expectation here on my end. So we've been double teaming this thing, and she's been able to handle the at-home stuff. Typically what I will try to do is get home and make sure that she gets time to go out, because the number one thing that I find was working a lot from home is I would get up in the morning and I would walk around campus just to simulate me walking to work on any given day, to try to maintain some sort of a schedule or some sort of normal schedule. And then I'd end up back at the house working on my back porch with a computer. But that's the other thing that she's been doing, is just trying to get up in the morning and get out and kind of maintain some sort of a normalcy on her end. But it's been challenging. It's you feel like you've been here for a while. You've been on this campus. We're very fortunate enough to have a beautiful place. We can walk down to the dock. We can sit on the back porch. Campus is, it's quiet. You know, it was nice for the first week or two. I think it gets a little bit too quiet at times now, although we do have some construction going on and some activity going on, which is kind of nice. But other than that, is nighttime, it's very quiet around here. It's kind of like you got the place to yourself, but almost eerily quiet. And it's a lot more fun when you can see all the cadets walking around and you get to see your guys. It's one of the hard things is when you see your guys come in and clean out the rooms, you want to go up and give them a big hug, but you can't. You just, hey, what's up, man? Been very challenging for us.
Yeah, I've noticed that. You want to go and say hey to people, but you got to go stop and just be like, hey, thank you. Hopefully they get the idea. Another question, live question is, how'd your girls do with the triple option plays on the kitchen table?
So I spent that was a Saturday night. I spent the Saturday painting that table. And I had the great idea. I said, I was sitting around the table, was a little bit marked up. I said, I'm going to paint this thing with some chalkboard paint. So I ended up painting with chalkboard paint. I thought it would be fun for the girls. And so they got on, and we started playing tic-tac-toe during dinner. And then we played hangman during dinner. And then eventually I couldn't resist the ability to go ahead and teach the triple option to somebody other than my players at this point. So I was excited to get it out there. What I didn't understand was when I was asking them to read number one, they had no idea what I was talking about. And we had this long discussion about how you read number one in the triple option. And finally, I realized that I probably need to slow this thing back down again. And they were asking me about the E's and the B's and the T's out there. And we went on for about 15 or 20 minutes. Then they got a little bit tired of that. And my wife started asking questions about it. And then she was interested and started taking pictures on it. So after a while, it turned into probably a little bit more of a discussion about the letters than it did about what we were actually doing with the letters out there.
Never waste an opportunity to teach. Never waste an opportunity to teach. There's
nobody else will listen to me anymore, so I get in there on those guys. I mean, I got to keep my skills up somehow.
We got a private question before I shift into the outlook onto the season. Some people wanted you to show off that frame right over your shoulder. Grab that for us, maybe, or tell us about what you got in there. Obviously, a photo of the final score, tickets from that game, and then the write-up from after the game, which is pretty good. Oh, he's got something else for us. Let's see. Hey, there you have it. Oh, the South Carolina game. Fantastic. We got to add a couple more of those. You've got to, what, 3 walls and a window, 4 walls? We got to get one for each wall.
I'm running out of space. I got this huge bulldog on my wall that I'm afraid is going to bring down the wall in here. But, yeah, so my wife got me both of those. She got me the one after the South Carolina game. And then after the South Carolina game, obviously this year, she got the same one, just kind of flipped the colors on it. And almost the same kind of deal. So it matched the other one. I was really excited about it. She did an awesome job of picking it out. And yeah, it's kind of become the center point of the office, both of those two pictures. And we're excited about those.
I actually got to show off. I went through the suites after the game. It hit me as a last second idea. Hey, I'm going to go run through. And this is the Wardlaw end of the stadium, the opposite end of where the field goal was made. and I went through and tried to grab them. And thankfully, the workers there, everybody was great that day. Very nice staff, no issues. But the game day workers, one guy had about 20 of them. For those of you who can see it, I ended up picking up like 4. I think the TCBF was going to use one in an auction, and they're going to use it from other things. But it's definitely something nice to have. Something nice to have. Moving on, some of the questions for the outlook on the season. First question here, what's the chance for the Citadel to win the Southern Conference this year? And then can we incorporate some trick plays on offense to keep the defense honest?
Oh, boy. First of all, I think the first question is, over the last couple of years, I finally feel like we're built. And that's why if we can find a way to play this season, I think we've got the pieces in place. Last year, we were close. And if it wasn't for just a few things that didn't go our way last year, I thought we really should have had a better year. And it's I take full blame for it. At the end of the year, we kind of fell off when we had an opportunity. One of my biggest probably regrets in coaching right there was just the way that we finished that season. So we're hungry to get back to this season because it is, I think as a staff, we have tried to do everything that we could possibly do, from keeping our fifth years here to developing our younger guys, our younger defensive guys, and bringing in some quality fifth years this year that are going to help us out. I think this is the year for us. Over the next 2 years, I think we've got a pretty good chance to be able to build this thing back up again. I know this is a cyclical program. We're going to be up and down. We've always got to be careful of how down our down years are. We were 5 and 6 wins the last couple of years. That's about as low as you really want to get to. We want to make sure that we have 7, 8, 9 win years stuck in there as well, which is what we were able to do back in 15 and 16. I think we're there just from an overall standpoint. And it's just, truthfully, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that back in 17 and 18 when we kind of lost a lot of really good players and had to redevelop our roster and redevelop our program. But I think we're there with the core nucleus of guys that we've got coming back, the leadership of the guys that we've got coming back. And I think we've got some of the more talented team that we had since we had Isaiah Pinson, D. Delaney, all those guys that were really good players for us back in 16 and 15. So I think that we're set up to have a good year. Now, is our schedule easy? No. Our schedule really wasn't easy last year either, but there's not a non-winnable game on there. There's no gimmies in there, but there's no non-winnable game in there. The last game of the year, or the second to last game, the Clemson game, obviously will be a bit of a challenge for us. But other than that, I think you can compete in there with the rest of those guys and give it the best. I think the schedule itself sets up okay. The travel sets up okay. I think those off years where you're going to Birmingham and you're going to Chattanooga in the same year are very, very challenging. We've got to make a tough trip up to Lexington this year, but that's about it. Other than that, the travel schedule helps you out. So I think the schedule sets up better for you. Most guys that know me, I'm obviously an offensive guy, is you'll see a trick play out of me every now and again when I think the time is about right. We carry at least one every single week, whether we use that one or not. We just carry it to the next week. You also know that I'm not a big gimmick guy. Our offense doesn't lend itself to be a gimmick offense. Is when you start installing those kind of things, you've got to spend time on them, and you got to pull the trigger at the right time when you have trick plays. A trick play for us, it really could be a pass or a reverse. So we do have at least a few end arounds. We're always going to flip it to Raleigh and give him an opportunity to be able to get around the edge on an end around reverse. Those things are kind of automatically built into our offense that we carry every single week. But for the most part, trick plays they can be very time consuming and what we call expensive. So you got to be careful of how many you do have in there. You probably need enough just to keep the defense honest. But other than that, our reverses just do that just fine. When you aim to be an execution team, you've got to be an execution team, and you've only got so much time in practice.
Along those offensive questions, or that question being offense related, are there any changes looking forward to the offense this year? A. B, are we going to see any RPOs from under center? And then C, how's the offensive line looking?
All right. Number one was any changes to the offense. Well, it depends. Each year, in any of those club meetings that I usually go to this time of year, I would say about 20% of our offense changes. Are you going to see dramatically different formations? No. Are you going to see dramatically different plays? No. We are a base triple option team. We have emphasized different things. We have emphasized three-man surfaces over the last couple of years, different three-man surface formations, use of a tight end, those kind of things. So this year we've got to figure out, are we better off having tight ends on the field or wide receivers on the field? Where do we need to kind of adjust that? Are there certain new dimensions to plays? Well, that's we've spent the last 2 weeks talking with the Army staff and some other staffs on Zoom clinics and finding out what really fits into our offense and what what direction we can move without overhauling our whole system and making sure that we've got the best techniques and fundamentals for our offense. So you'll see that a little bit. And then what was the last question? Oh, RPOs. Yeah, run pass options is I've discussed a few RPOs out of the spread and out of what we're doing underneath center wise. There's a couple of guys out there that do it. They have certain concepts to it. We can incorporate a couple of those concepts, but you won't see it per se like you would normally see out of a shotgun team, just due to the fact that in a shotgun team, the ball gets back. The quarterback sits there and reads a defender on the other side of the line of scrimmage and really determines whether he wants to get the ball out and throw it right where the defender was or hand the ball off to where the defender isn't. It's just a little bit of a different scheme and philosophy than we have, but there are certain things that we can incorporate there. It's just we've got to wrap our minds around it a little bit more.
Okay. Coming out of the spring, are there starters set for cornerback? And then the signing of the grad transfers, will someone move to A-back?
Well, I alluded to it a little bit before with we needed the depth at B-back, I thought. Now, there is some thought there. I've had some back and forth there as we've been developing Logan Billings. We've been developing Amike Nwanze to be the backup B-back and eventually the starter there. And then when you add another guy to the mix and Clay, you may not have room for all those guys. And one of those guys, I don't think it'll be either the first two guys because we need them. So whoever the first two guys, however that shakes out, we're always going to carry 2 to 3 B-backs every single game just to make sure that we've got enough. Those guys take a pretty good beating. So there is a possibility of one of those guys. I wouldn't necessarily say it would be any of the top 2 that would go to A-back. But if I do feel that we can improve the A-back position a little bit, because there's even another thought there that at the quarterback spot, you got Evan Schickel coming back. You've got Jalen Adams, who moved the quarterback and I thought did a very nice spring, had a very nice spring. And then you've got Cooper Walls, who had a very nice spring. So you've got 3 options at the backup quarterback spot, or 3 guys to be able to push Brandon Rainey, which if you guys remember going back to last year was challenging. We had to put Brian Murdaugh, who had seen very little action and did a great job in finishing the Georgia Tech game and starting and finishing and winning the CSU game for us. But you got yourself in a bad situation there at quarterback, which is not the position I like to be in. When we first got here in 2014, we had 1 quarterback on the roster, was Aaron Miller, and then we were able to late add and sign Dominique Allen to give us a little bit of help there.
Do you see any sophomores or freshmen contributing this upcoming season and getting them ready to challenge for positions? How are they doing that virtually? What are we saying to those guys?
Well, it's hard to monitor, and we're not really allowed to monitor at this point. So we just provide a little bit of structure in there, a little bit of guidance in there, is just to be able to get out and do something until we can actually physically get them on campus in order to develop them. I think that's a benefit for us as well. We're not counting on a whole lot of guys like we were last year as true freshmen coming in to be able to start for us on the defensive side like we had. So you'll see a bunch of sophomores over there because a lot of those guys that played a lot for us, Hassan Black, he played a lot for us last year. You're going to see Andy Davis quite a bit on the defensive side. You're going to see Dewey Green on the defensive side as well. So Jay Smith you'll see over there actually going into his junior year, but guys that played a lot of reps for us may not have been starters the whole year. You'll see most of those guys contributing. As far as the freshmen are concerned, we shouldn't have to rely a whole lot on them, maybe on the defensive front more than anything else. At the cornerback position, there's about 3 or 4 guys in the mix there. One of them, Torian Spencer, could be a sophomore there, but coming out of the spring, it was between Destin Mack, who's a junior, Torian Spencer, who's a sophomore, Jay Howard and Javante Middleton are both juniors. So you got more experience at the corner position than you had last year.
You mentioned the defense there, maybe needing some help from freshmen or sophomore or some assistance there. Any thoughts or anything you can mention about the defense?
Well, yeah, I think Coach Grantham feels like he's got the whole defensive package in, which when he got here last spring, he wasn't able to put everything in. He was just putting enough in or whatever they could handle. Anybody that knows or has seen or understands anything about defensive football, you'd understand that his system is dynamic. It's complex. It's tough to pick up at times. It's compartmentalized so that he uses a lot of different body types, which is what I absolutely love about his defense. Is he doesn't have to rely or dial in on one or two body types that can be hard to find in recruiting at times. He's going to take what's given to him and he's going to make the best of it. He's going to use guys in different packages. So I think he's going to have the full complement of his defense going into this year rather than where he was at going into last year. It was really get it in for the game and get it in for the game plan last year. Well, this year he was able to get just about his whole defensive playbook in spring ball, and then he'll be able to refine it more in the fall.
Thank you. A couple of questions came into me privately, folks. If you have questions for Coach, feel free to ask them in the chat. You don't have to send them directly to me. You can send them just through the general chat. When you earlier, you talked about travel. Is there a concern with the hotels staying overnight before a road game, being sanitized before they arrive? Any thoughts on that or comments on that?
I really haven't thought too much about that at that point. I think that would be something that I would bring up with Andy and talk to him a little bit about that. He deals with most of the hotels on the front end. We've been in communication with, for instance, the Wofford Hotel up in Spartanburg already. So far, everything's been good to go on that end. That would probably be it's a good question, be something that we would just reassure ourselves with and reassure our administration with that there are proper precautions taking place. Now, I will say this, though, is we've stayed in mostly pretty quality hotels where you would have that level of expectation as well.
What's the biggest loss from last year's team? And then who do you think other than Alex will be new impact player of this year?
Well, losing two guys up front, I think we've got the bodies to replace them, but you're losing a 4-year starter in Drew McIntyre at the right guard spot. Played everything right guard to right tackle, and he could do a lot there. That's always everything starts up front on the offensive side. I think that's the major concern. Everywhere else, we really didn't graduate anybody on offense. Defensively, you'll lose a little bit of experience with the guys on the defensive line that we lost, but really between Joe Randolph and Aaron Brawley, those would be the two guys that you lost, and that's where I think Dewey Green's going to have to step in, which he did a good job. But you're replacing Joe Randolph, who was a 4-year player for us, an all-conference player for us, and Aaron Brawley, who was a 3-year player for us because he graduated early. A guy that just had a huge motor. Unfortunately, I think he had an injury at the end of the year and wasn't able to finish it. So, once again, I think that's where you see the sophomores. You'll see a lot more Gunnar Covey. Gunnar's coming back for his 5th year. Played a lot for us, a great player for us over the last couple of years. Excited to get him back in that depth. Dalton Owens. A lot of those guys are going to have to be interchangeable. Jay Smith, who plays mostly nose but can play outside a little bit. So we've got to be creative on the defensive front.
Another question is if you can talk about what it's like to, have the fans in the stands when we come back, provided that everything's okay or people are wearing proper face masks, that we're socially distancing. What does that mean for you, for the coaches, for the team to see the stands filled with Citadel fans?
Well, number one is I think it'll hurt us or harm us the most is I think we have the best following. Anywhere we go, we travel very well. I think we've always got a good visiting stands, and we've always got a good home crowd. Is when you have the Corps of Cadets there, you're automatically adding 2,000 people. You're adding a home field advantage when you've got them tucked into the one end zone. You'll notice that we always try to go that way in the fourth quarter, even though we defer most of the time. But if I've got a chance to go, we go that way in the fourth quarter or overtime because it's a home field advantage. We could typically get between 8,000 to 12,000 people at our game. I think that'll be the biggest challenge as to whether we're going to be able to get to those numbers again, and if that's going to be a safe number for us to get to. And if we can, I think it would be back to a big advantage for us. I don't think that we go to anywhere. Western will draw a pretty decent crowd, but I don't think that you go anywhere and get quite the crowd that we do. And then when you go up and play Clemson up there, that's a completely different animal. I don't know how they're going to handle that. So if you had less fans or no fans, that will be an eerie feeling, and that will be a different football atmosphere.
Speaking of the Clemson games, just for fans on here that want to know, we have tickets for that game that we are going to be selling. They have extended their deadline to us, Clemson, because again, there's still a lot of unknowns. But for those that are interested, obviously you can get a hold of our ticket office. You can call Brigadier Foundation as well. We do have a limited number of tickets, but we do have tickets available, and they've been great to work with. Our ticket manager has been in contact with them probably every couple of weeks just to make sure that we're still good for the deadline, because I think the original deadline was sometime in this month. Actually, it might have been May 1 to return any unsold. So they're working with us on that. So if there's an interest to attend that game, again, you can do that by letting our ticket office know, tickets@citadel.edu. Feel free to send them an email. Do we have any questions out there? I guess we got some time. We got about 15 minutes left here. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. I'm going to go back to a gallery view here. So if you've got a question, go ahead and ask it. You just have to unmute yourself.
Coach, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I got you.
Listen, I'm sure the officials all receive ratings on every game. Are the coaching staffs privy to how the officiating crews are rated?
No, typically with the old commissioner, we were not. Now, this is an adjustment for us this year, is we've aligned ourselves with the Southeastern Conference and a new commissioner of officials for us. He will work out of Birmingham, and he will work with the Southeastern Conference officials. So we may have a little bit of a different evaluation process. The evaluation process on our end was very vague. It was very quick. I never saw whatever was on the other end of it. And I think that was part of it. There's very little transparency there. And I think that was part of the transition. We wanted to have a little bit more training for our officials. We wanted to have a little bit more transparency in how that process was going. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out with the Southeastern Conference officiating. We're going to have some guys that transition between the Sun Belt, the Southeast, and the SoCon, which we think is going to help us out. We think it's going to get us better officials that are going to be able to move up and move down depending on what week they are and how things go.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.
Question, Brent.
Yes.
Has there been any talk about rescheduling the 2 fundraiser golf tournaments that we've missed here in the spring?
For the CFA tournament will be June the 18th. If you go to my Facebook page, I reposted it there. Robbie Briggs is in charge of that. We're still working on an alternative date for the Bulls Bay. We're looking at possibly a fall date or a change of venue to see if we can try to get something done.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
Hey, Brent.
Yes.
Hey, Travis Stevens here.
Hey, Travis.
How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm really good. One of the folks on your staff that really impresses me is your strength and conditioning coach. I know I follow him on Instagram. Seems like he has a great relationship. And out of them. Is he able to engage with the players now? And then also, how are you able to kind of keep in contact with him to kind of track how the players are developing? I'm going to date myself. When I played there, they used to send us books during the summer that we'll work out with in the prehistoric ages. I know we're much more advanced than that, but I'm kind of curious because he seems like he would be an integral link into making sure the kids are staying in shape and developing even when we're not able to touch them personally.
Yeah, Travis, that's it's a great analysis really of how that works. The strength and conditioning piece to everything has changed because the way that I see the position and the way that the position has evolved as far as Coach Boucher is concerned is that he interacts with every single one of our players. He interacts with just about every single athlete on this campus. He is a guy that connects with them on a daily basis, and he can do it. So we've got a couple of different ways. So if we are just if we've got the team broken down in the teams, and this is how we did our communication throughout the 6 weeks of being apart. Donnell and I would jump on with the team leader. The team leader had about 6 or 7 guys that he drafted, and he would kind of give us the update on the team, or we would meet with those 6 or 7 guys on a Zoom call and kind of lay out the plan. I thought it was going to be very challenging for me, as well as Coach D, because he's got to lay out a plan for the strength and conditioning. To do it in a format such as this, where you have 90 guys on a phone call, you can't get to every single guy. You can't have a personal relationship with them. So we automatically, Donnell does that for off-season strength and conditioning competitions. He does that for communication. That is our leadership council, and that takes us throughout the whole year. He sets that up. He runs that, and that's our number one piece of communication. So we have that group, and then we've got what's called a GroupMe app where we can message the team real quick. We can message the just that group of guys real quick. We can do the coaches. We can do the freshmen. We can separate all those guys if we just need to spit a quick text message out. The last piece that you talked about was the huge piece, which is, we all took home manuals, right? You wrote in the manuals, you turned it back in when you came in here, and you hoped everybody did it. Well, right now we're in what's called a discretionary phase, so we can't keep track. We can only just issue weightlifting regimens at this point. But when we start to get into what we would typically do, if we're allowed to track it, say in June, when we would typically be allowed to track what kids are doing, we have what's called I'm drawing a blank on the app right now, but it uploads a program automatically to the player. They can download it to their phone, and then they can also put in all their weights, and that uploads back to Donnell, and he can chart, see, and be able to make adjustments to their program based upon what their weights are. And that's instantaneously. He can spit it out to a spreadsheet. Travis, it's amazing on what they can do right now. Got your message about Georgia Tech, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Travis.
Any other questions we've got? I've actually got 2 things that were asked athletic department wise. There was a question asked about, I watched the games by streaming. It would be more enjoyable if the camera's on the other side of the field. That is actually something we are investigating having to do. Not sure if we'll do it for this year. So if you're watching the game, you would have the camera on the behind the visiting team bench or on the side of it. But we're looking into that. That's something that is we know we're aware of. We're looking to see if we can fix that. Not sure if it'll happen this year, but yes, we did get your question. We did have that. For those of you that have not seen the weight room, obviously Donnell posts that. I believe our football program has posted that. But next Tuesday, we have a video coming out where our strength and conditioning coach gives a tour of that facility, and it's pretty impressive. It's about a 6-minute video. So that's coming out on Tuesday. So watch either Facebook, Twitter. I'm sure it'll be on the football accounts as well. So any other questions we have for Coach?
Coach, this is Jack Jameson.
Hey, Jack.
Just to be clear, at this point, you don't know what timeline for players to be able to actually come back on campus. Is that correct?
We do not. We've got a plan for 4 weeks. We've got a plan for 5 weeks. We've got a plan for 6 weeks. And that's what I've asked Donnell to do. I've also asked Donnell to put a plan together as to what could it possibly look like? What is the safest way to do it? 1 per rack, give us an hour, a half an hour in between groups are coming in the weight room to be able to cleanse and disinfect the place. Those are things that we just needed to have a plan for just in case they do allow us to be able to bring our players back, or at least open up the weight room. Right now, we're not even allowed to open it up, but open up the weight room for guys that live here, guys that are staying here, guys that have the opportunity to get back to campus and be able to just get a lift in with us. So, we think that there is some opportunity and some possibility, but we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way and that we don't have any issues with if we do it.
And I know with the tragic loss of Rashad and FCA, everybody's still mourning that as a tragic thing. Looking forward though, is FCA still going to be able to be on campus and be involved with athletics?
Yeah, I've been in communication with the regional director of the FCA down here. Justin and I have talked. We are in plans of hopefully being able to do that. I think that is a key component to everything that our players need or would like around here. I think it's something that we're going to miss if we don't have it. So I'm going to probably get back up with him. It was a seamless transition between Rashawn Frost and having Rashad because we knew them. They were Citadel guys. Rashad was definitely a Citadel guy through and through, and Frosty had been here long enough where he had known the ins and outs of the place that, we're going to miss their just their presence in travel and just their presence on a daily basis. They'd be out there at practice with us. And it was good for me to have around at times too, is just somebody outside the staff to be able to talk to and sit down with and, just carry on a conversation outside of football.
Do we have any other questions? Anything else for Coach? I've got one. If nobody else does, hopefully it's a softball one here. Once, going twice. Coach, what shows have you been watching? I know that Coach is one of your favorite shows all time. What other shows are you out there watching? Is there anything your kids have gotten into, your wife has gotten into, or any of the other coaches are saying, hey, you got to watch this on Netflix or you got to watch that? Anything out there like that?
Well, let's see. I've run through Bosch, which was on Amazon Prime, one of my favorites. I think there's about six seasons of that. I've run through the latest season of Ozark, which is one of my favorites. When that came out, they go for about a week for me, as I can sit down and watch them in about a week. I've kind of run my course of them right now. But those are the two, man. I watch very little network TV anymore because I kind of try to get into that. But by the time we put the girls down, we get about an hour worth of TV. So that's why we can get about one show, one episode a night. If we're feeling lucky, like we can stay up till about 11 o'clock, we can get two in there. But we've had a couple of those that have intrigued us a little bit. It's been hard. It's been hard without having any kind of sports on. Typically we would. I've repainted the inside of the house. I think I've gotten 7 rooms done. I've got about 1 room to do inside of the house. I've been painting tables. I mean, we replanted the front yard a little bit. We've been looking for things to do on the weekends because it's been there's nowhere to go, nothing to do.
I hear that. Well, Coach, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Everyone that attended as well, thank you for coming. Those of you who submitted questions either on the chat or via the registration, we definitely appreciate. Thank you all for your time. We appreciate that you're supporters. Any last words? Any words of wisdom or thoughts you'd like to impart on us, Coach?
Nothing. It's good to see you guys. Like I said, a lot of familiar faces that I haven't seen in a long time. I really do appreciate you guys supporting us all the way throughout. These are going to be fun. I think they're going to be interesting. I believe we've got about 3 or 4 more of these coming up. There'll be one next week with Coach Zelenak, which will be awesome. Just getting an insight on some of those programs that you don't hear a whole lot about, the volleyball program and things that I don't even know about with those guys. And having Coach Balcom, I've traveled a lot with Coach Balcom, so I know what goes on. That will always be entertaining when he gets on here. So continue to do it. We appreciate your support. And, I'm pretty much an open book. If you guys want to ask me a question, shoot it at me, man. I'm good.
Yes, we definitely appreciate that. Thank you. And again, next Friday is going to be volleyball. Coach Dave's going to be on, and registration for that will open up, I believe, Friday. So you'll be able to check out at citadelsports.com/dogtalk. Again, citadelsports.com/dogtalk. Again, thank you all today. We appreciate it. Coach, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kevin.